I might have been at the very first new music seminar in the 80s, which I don't actually mind dating myself, when there was something called new wave music and something called alternative rock that were brand new art forms coming into our musical world. And back in the day, Tom Silverman put together this fabulous music convention, and it drew all of the hipsters and all the coolest people and all the people who were sort of the future executives to New York City to see hundreds of bands perform and hear people on panels discussing music. And I think that we should recognize what a Leviathan effort this is to pull this off, and give it up for Tom Silverman. I'm Ron Fair. I'm the moderator of the A&R panel, which is also not to be confused with a shooting gallery, because I know that people love to take shots at major label A&R people. Many of the big guns in the record industry in the world are sitting in front of you today, and we'll have a chance to meet them. But I want to talk about the central theme of why I do things like this, and something that is in common to all of us who are here today, which is why the New Music Seminar exists in the first place. It exists because of care. We care. We give a shit about music. It is our life's blood. It is our food. It is our oxygen. It is our religion. It is such a tough field of endeavor, an exciting field of endeavor, that to just stay in it year after year and to continue to persevere through rejection and disappointment, you have to care beyond anything else. I wasn't intended to get applause. It's just fun to share that we all have the same religion to some extent, which is the belief in music. And with that belief, the belief in recording music that can move things, change things, move people, make money, and have great lives in life and music. So I'm Ron Fair. I'm a record producer, record executive, former chairman of Geffen Records and president of A&M, producer of Christina Aguilera, the Black Eyed Peas, the Pussycat Dolls, Mary J. Blige, Keisha Cole, Snow Patrol, A&R guy, been around forever, 30 years, 15 Grammy Awards, my records have won. None of that's important. What's important today is to engage these gentlemen in a dialogue about A&R, artists, and repertoire. I'm almost done. A&R is like the dark arts of record making. There's no book, there's no syllabus, there's no college course, there's nothing to learn A&R except word of mouth and experience and traveling the back roads of every form of record making, whether it be guys in their bedrooms or nightclubs or DJs or guitar players or expatriates of jazz who unlearn and become pop people. There's absolutely no method, there's no courses, nothing. And yet it's this amorphous, beautiful field that's been used as a verb as well. To A&R something means to curate it. It means to love it. It means to grow it and nurture it. It could also mean to shit on it and disobey it and take it to where it has to go in order to find its biggest audience. And it's A&R, artists and repertoire. All of us started in the same field of endeavor from different angles, and today you'll hear different approaches to it. And let us proceed. Now I'll introduce everybody kind of off the top of my head freestyle. You can look in your program and find out more. But the two bookends here, the Lipman brothers, are legends of this industry. Monte, who started out as a promotion man, worked his way up to chairman of Republic Universal with his brother Avery. When they didn't have any records to work, they went out and found them. They developed their own methodology. They've created this incredible label in a major system that is still based on one thing, which is caring. And the artists that they have brought forth, all the way from Amy Winehouse, Taylor Swift, Florence and the Machine, Colby Calais, Three Doors Down. I mean, this is off the top of my head, and I haven't read the cue card. So Avery and Monte Lipman, who are matching, they're color coordinated. Steve Greenberg, who was president of Columbia Records, another great A&R man. Unfortunately, I don't know all of your credits off the top of my head, but Joss Stone, you signed, I believe. Another incredible artist and experience. He left the major label system to develop his own record label S-Curve Records. He's a leader in the business and very wise man and great A&R guy and compadre, Steve Greenberg. I'm going to come back to you, Darius, but Josh Deutsch was my most fearsome competitor for years and years when we would try to sign the same groups. He was in bands, he was a songwriter, he was a great A&R man at major labels. He left a few years back and started his own concern called Downtown, which is publishing and content and records, and he's a great curator, he's a great music man who's started a little bit ahead of everybody else in the reinvention of the way our business is done. Josh Deutsch. You guys are lucky. This is really like what they used to say at Disneyland, the e-ticket of A&R panels. Peter Edge. Back in the day, we all started off together. There was an A&R department at Chrysalis Records in England that had Simon Fuller, Peter Edge, Ron Fair, and Alison Donald. Pete Edge went on to become one of the great record men of his generation. He was responsible for signing and discovering Alicia Keys. He's the current, I think, your chairman or president of the RCA Music Group, and a fantastic A&R man with his own unique vision, Peter Edge. This is fun. And next is Craig Kallman, who started off as a DJ and a musician, and in his college dorm created Big Beat Records, was one of the first guys to really get his hands dirty on crossover records from urban to pop, worked his way up from literally nothing all the way to chairman of Atlantic Records. He's one of the great success stories and music curators as an A&R guy and executive in our business, and that's Craig Kallman. Hit after hit. His portfolio includes like country acts and urban acts and pop acts. Like, there's no musical boundaries on this panel at all. And last is Darius, who I don't know. The first time meeting him today, and I've just been reading a little bit about you. But I think the Best New Artist Grammy winner is signed to your company. Am I not mistaken? Yes. Bon Iver. This is the man behind Bon Iver, who's got a federation of 3 independent labels, and he will bring his unique independent perspective to this panel today. So let's dive in and start with just a little bit of, hi, my name is, and any anecdote you might have about what brings you here today, and then we'll move the panel in a forward direction. We'll start with you, Avery.
Hi, Avery Litman. I'm co-president of Universal Republic Records, and I'm just really glad to see so many people here interested in the music business. And, it's been a rough go over the last, 10, 12 years, but again, it's really great to see so much interest and brain power that's coming back into the business, so welcome.
Thank you. So you're not off the hook that easy, Avery. So let's go back to, boyhood. Like, how did you get here? Like, what was the defining moment when you said, I got to make records. This is my calling.
Jeez. Well, I think, for me, I remember the first time I listened to a vinyl record. It was Cheap Trick. And I just remember, actually, it's so vivid, the moment of taking the record out of the wrapper, taking the lint off the needle on the record player, and dropping the needle and just listening to that record. And I think from that moment, I don't know, maybe I was 10 years old, I was really just fascinated with the music business and just the creation of music and how a song, how a recording can really just, it to this day, it's the thing that brings me into work every day. It's just how something just that starts from nothing that can change your mood, make you feel good, make you feel excited, inspire you. So I've always been amazed by people who can create that, an idea that goes from a blank canvas to a creation that can really, what is a song? You can't touch it, you can't see it, but again, it's so powerful. So to this day, I still am mystified by it, and it brings me to work every day.
So I'd like to ask you 3 questions so people in the audience get to know you a little bit better. The first question is, are you a musician yourself?
No, I've actually never played an instrument in my life.
Okay, next question is, what is your favorite record of yours that you made or signed or brought to fruition?
Well, there's been a few. I think The one that I'm actually most proud of, and this one goes right down the middle. Either people really admire it or really hate it. But the group that I really got started with is a band called the Bloodhound Gang, back in the mid '90s, and it was a group that actually a friend of mine. I was working in a record company at the time, and a friend of mine, pulled it out of the trash and said, "You got to hear how bad this record is," and true story, and I checked it out. I said, well, actually, it's sort of interesting. So,
what song was it?
The record was called Mama Say, and when I learned a lot, it's interesting. I learned the most from a group like the Bloodhound Gang. I don't know if you guys are familiar. It's sort of like Howard Stern meets the Beastie Boys. It's sort of this irreverent kind of. It was sort of the Jackass equivalent of music, So, but I learned a lot from that project, and I actually learned from that artist of all artists, kind of unexpected, to really believe in your artist, believe in their vision, believe in their point of view, and group did really, really well.
Thanks. Okay, Steve Greenberg. So same idea. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I grew up listening to the radio, and I was one of those kids who, taped songs off the radio onto cassettes and kept all the titles listed in a big book and, wanted to know every record. And I think what I've always brought to A&R over the years is the perspective of a listener, somebody who just loves to listen to records. And that's not always a perspective, especially when you're producing records, that you find inside a studio. Sometimes you find inside a studio musician's perspective, an engineer's perspective, but there's not always somebody there kind of almost representing the listener, and I always have felt that that's what I've brought to the table.
So Steve, you kind of answered one of the questions, but tell us your favorite record of yours.
Wow. There's a couple. I've been very fortunate over the years to have worked with a lot of young artists and signed a lot of young artists, because I signed Hanson years ago and Joss Stone and then the Jonas Brothers. So I would say it's got to be one of those young records, and so it's either going to be Bop or way at the other end of the spectrum, Joss Stone, the Soul Sessions, and those are completely different kind of records, but I'm proud of both of them, and I always just love it when you find somebody who's a raw talent and they've never made a record before, they've never been in a recording studio before, and suddenly magic happens.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, Darius, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm from Bloomington, Indiana, in New York City, and I founded the record label Jagjaguwar in '96. I'm part of 3 record labels, Dead Oceans, Jagjaguwar, and Secret the Canadian, and I have a bunch of partners, and I think that's a good, rough summary.
So what was the galvanizing moment in your life when you said, I'm going to have a record label, I'm going to strike out on my own and sign artists? I mean, I want to get a feel for why.
I had a friend who I lived with in Charlottesville, Virginia, and he was in this band called The Curious Digit. He couldn't find any record labels. I was working at a home for adults who needed assisted living, and there was a snowstorm in Charlottesville, Virginia. I was snowed in. It was a rare Charlottesville, Virginia snowstorm. I was snowed in for a week, got like triple time, put out my friend's CD, then met through that a band in Richmond, Virginia called Drunk, who wanted a label as well, put out their CD, and that was how we became a label.
So I'm just curious, I want to park on this for a second. Who was your mentor who was showing you the ropes or teaching you how to do this?
No mentor. I think it was just, a lot of time spent at the college radio station, promoting shows. I think labels that I looked up to at the time were Drag City, Touch and Go, Kill Rock Stars, K Records, Matador, a lot of labels who I felt like were primarily releasing music for music's sake, and that was an inspiring time for me to get into the music business.
Were you in bands yourself?
No, but I was promoting shows at a venue in Charlottesville.
Okay, so concert promoter and dreamer and schemer, and congratulations, fantastic what you're doing. Okay, Josh, break it down.
At 15, I had an internship at an awesome recording studio called The Power Station, which is now called Avatar. And there was never any looking back for me. So I spent most of my life in the studio. I was in bad bands, as Craig will attest, and ended up as a session guy after college.
What instrument?
Pardon me?
What did you play?
Guitar and anything I could program.
Okay.
And got my first publishing deal, and then I started working for a staff producer at Atlantic, actually. And I thought that was the dream job.
Who was that?
Russ Titleman.
Russ Titleman.
Was there forever. And I thought that was the best gig in the world. You know, you had make records for a great heritage label and have some say in how those records were delivered. So I wanted to come inside. That really whetted my appetite for the record business. I went to business school and got plucked, got hired by the great Bruce Lundvall, who was a mentor to me at Blue Note. And then I ended up running A&R departments at Capitol and Elektra and Virgin before starting my own shop at Downtown 5 years ago.
So what was the moment when you said, fuck it, I want to start my own company?
I was really frustrated by the record business at the time. I felt like, you know, and I have been periodically, although this is, I think, a time of optimism for a lot of us. And I really saw, honestly, I saw the wall kind of coming at me, and I had Gnarls Barkley in my pocket, and I thought, you know, I hadn't done anything entrepreneurial, and I really wanted to. A lot of the stars aligned. Two of my best friends from high school, you know, were available to me in a way to create a company. Thankfully, one of them was an investment banker. I knew a little bit about starting a business, so we started, you know, we just leaped and learned more, I think, in the first 15 months than in 15 years of doing business. So.
Thanks, Josh. Okay, so your favorite record that you made?
I got to go with Gnarls. I've made a lot of records and done a lot of hands-on stuff. With Gnarls, I had the common sense to just say thank you very much and not, you know, mess it up. That's happened a couple times in my career. You just get lucky like that. So I thought that was a, you know, that was a success that Craig and I had together. Because our Downtown's first distributor was Atlantic. But that was a crazy ride. So, you know, there's a laundry list of other ones.
That's a great one. So, Peter Edge, tell us a little bit about yourself.
You know, my older sister's soul record collection from the 70s definitely inspired me, not a surprise. And you know, I was fortunate enough to be around ska and new wave, and then the beginning of hip hop in the 80s, and you know, Chrysalis Records, where Ron and I first met, actually in the 80s, when I was out of college, and you know, then I met Clive Davis in the 90s and got to work with him, learned a hell of a lot from him, and then you know, met Alicia Keys in '95, and we developed her music, and obviously that was incredible. You know, her launch in the early 2000s, and you know, now I find, you know, it's a lot of history, but you know, potted history. I find myself at RCA. You know.
So you're a kid in England, and you decide, I want to be an A&R guy. Like, that's what I want to figure out. Like, when did you discover this was your calling?
Actually, you know, hearing those like disembodied voices coming from my sister's bedroom, honestly, when I heard it through the grapevine by Marvin Gaye, I was like, yes, that's for me. That's it. That's what I want to do. You know, I heard that record, and that changed my life. You know.
So, what would you say is your favorite record
that you've made? I've been involved with quite a few, and this is always a bit of a trick question, isn't it?
And it's a trick question, but it's just fun.
Artist, yeah. Probably Falling by Alicia Keys. That was obviously a pivotal moment. I think it's a classic record.
It is a classic record.
I'm also really proud of some of the early hip-hop records I worked on, you know, the Slick Rick and, you know, all of those records. And Michelle Ndegeocello, I think, was like completely an innovator in the 90s, you know. Probably most people don't even know what I'm talking about, but, you know, I think it's a great record. And then some of the recent stuff is, you know, I'm excited about too, you know.
Thank you, Pete. Okay, Craig, you're up.
I grew up in New York City in very early age, was in the downtown record stores, kind of living there as I discovered music, 13, 14, 15, and became kind of an avid record collector, and then used the record collection to parlay into hustling DJ jobs in New York City, and was fortunate to get a job at Danceteria. It was the first nightclub I got a gig in, and then soon kind of expanded that into the Tunnel, the World, and area, Palladium, Danceteria for many years, and then went to Brown and graduated and started my own independent record label right out of college, and did that for 4 years, and it caught the attention of Atlantic Records, and ended up getting convinced by Arman and Doug to sell my company to Atlantic, and I've been there ever since. So it's been 21 years.
How many years ago was that?
That was 21 years ago.
Wow. So that's your whole life, it's a whole lifetime. So what, Craig, you've made so many. What would you say is your favorite Craig Kallman record?
I think for me, kind of the most personal is probably the record that was sparked when I was literally DJing at the Tunnel, and that was really the record that kind of kicked off Big Beat, the start of my independent label. I was just in a club playing this artist's record, and sheer chance he happened to be in the club that night and came up to the DJ booth, and we started talking, and convinced him to make a record, and saw Artist Craze, and we came up with the Y'all Want This Party Started Right record from Strafe, and that was the record that I literally just started selling out of a trunk of a car, and before I knew it, I sort of had built a full-fledged company off the back of that one song.
That's great. Monty.
Hi, I'm Monte Lipman. I am Avery Litman's older brother by 18 months. The one thing that Avery didn't mention about the Cheap Trick album, at the time it was 1976, it's the only record we owned. And what happened during that period is our television literally blew up. And when I tell you it blew up, I mean there was fire and sparks, and my father at the time thought it was a sign from above and said we were watching too much television. So for the next 2 years, really the only entertainment in the house was the radio and this one Cheap Trick album. And I remember during this period, one Sunday morning listening to Casey Kasem, and there was a song called Baker Street, which was #1 on the charts. And I didn't even know what that term meant, but I remember being inspired and doing the research and really giving it some thought, and asking my friends at school, what do you know about this Billboard chart? And, I heard this record and the rest of it. So that's really where the fascination began.
So how did you break in then? How do you go from watching the exploding TV to, to a promotion guy? Who gave you the shot?
It was really, I think for most of us up here, it's a passion, and when I speak to people and, the interns come into, the session and we go through this, it's the kind of thing that this has always been our hobby, and we're fortunate because we found a way to get paid for something that we love. But I also remind them the day we're thrown out, we're going to continue to do this because it's all we know. So whether we get paid or not, this is what we do. It's in our blood, it's in our DNA. And we can't help it, or certainly I can't. And it's just something, when I wake up in the morning, the very first thing I do is, I look on iTunes and I look at the records and I look at the airplay, and it's just, it's an obsession. And fortunately, it's a healthy obsession. But, that's just the way we're wired.
So, Monty, what's your favorite Monte Litman record?
Monte Lipman record. The thing that Avery didn't mention about the Bloodhound Gang is it certainly put us on the map, but it was, not to sound too over the top, but it was a life or death situation, professionally speaking, because, at the time we had raised about $100,000, through 6-7 credit cards, and we were maybe, 3-4 weeks away from bankruptcy. And there's a guy in the room that it's important that I point out, and I'm thrilled that he's here today, because for those of you in the room, and we'll talk about this a little later, there will be moments in your careers that there is that person that will change your life forever. And for us, it was a guy by the name of Frankie Blue. And Frankie's in the back, and, Frankie.
Frankie Blue. Let's hear it for Frankie Blue. There he is.
And what happened was Frankie was down in Miami, and he programmed something called The Box, the video jukebox. And at the time, Avery and I, we had the Bloodhound Gang. You know, we were paying for the record ourselves and really had nowhere else to go with it. And I remember we scratched together, I think it was $80 on JetBlue or whatever it is, and I flew down to Miami. And I never met Frankie Blue. He was always this person that was way up there, and he worked at, you know, the Z100, and you couldn't get near this guy. The only people that can get close to Frankie Blue were these, you know, the heads of companies and presidents and chairmen, and the guy was nice enough to take a meeting with me, so I played him the video, which we paid all of $3,000 for, and fortunately he got the joke. He thought it was clever, and he says, you know what, I'm going to do you a favor. I'm going to add your record, and then I'm going to take you to Red Lobster because you look hungry. That's true. And he played the record, and I'd say in 2 weeks the record was the top 10 most requested on the box, and our life changed forever, you know, so clearly it's the Bloodhound
Well, it's great that
Gang.
Frankie's here today, and you pay tribute to it. That's great. Okay, so let's now shift gears and come right into current day, which is, as we talk about A&R, what is it? I said it was a dark art. There's nothing specific about it. There's so many million ways to do it. I want to address that. I want to address what is the state-of-the-art contemporary criteria right now when you're evaluating new music and deciding, I want to roll the dice on that. How does it hit you? Start with you, Avery. Let's try to keep the answers short, and we'll zip through these.
You know, I can't, you know, I get this question all the time. I mean, a lot of people will say, hey, how do I get a record deal? And usually the answer is, first thing is stop trying to get a record deal. Try to become popular. And with all the new outlets and, you know, with the internet, et cetera, there's so many outlets where you can begin to affect change yourself. So, but ultimately, it's just trying to recognize passion. And certainly sometimes it's passion that I have for a particular record, but, you know, for the most part, it's passion that an artist can create outside to the fans. It's no longer the record labels as the gatekeepers, so to speak. It's really the people themselves. And if you can demonstrate that your music and your art and your craft generates passion, then that's the way to do it.
Thank you, Avery. So, Steve, same thing. What's the criteria today that gets you out of your chair and makes you say yes?
For me, it's always an artist who has a unique sound, somebody who's doing something that's not quite like what everybody else is doing. About 100 years ago, there was this baseball player named Wee Willie Keeler, and his motto was, I hit 'em where they ain't. And we like to hit 'em where they ain't. It's a crowded field out there, and if you're a big label, it's very often very productive to do things that sound very much like what's happening at the moment, because you've got the muscles to kind of get into the marketplace with your version of that. But when you're an independent label, I think it's really important to say, what might people like if they got to hear it, but they're not hearing it yet? And so when somebody comes into my office with something that nobody's doing that thing right now, but I think, God, if people heard this, they're going to love it, that's what I jump up and down for.
Thank you. Darius, what moves your needle?
That's a tough question. I think my belief is that, or at least this is what I believe about myself, I don't think me or my partners really know what's going to be successful. I think it's a crapshoot to some extent. So for us, it starts with whether we actually enjoy what we're hearing. And from that, we do a little bit more exploration, and we're like, hey, who are these artists who've made this music? And if we feel like they're compelling people to work with and are people that others will find compelling, and there's some aspect of who they are that will, you know, help make a good story, then I think we're inspired to work with them.
Thank you. Okay, Josh?
I think one of the most difficult things for any artist is to connect emotionally very directly with an audience. So for me, I'm looking for records that are moving to me. It doesn't really matter what the genre is. And we're also looking, we're looking for, being on the independent side of the fence now, we're looking for records that we can have success with. There are things that I know that are awesome that don't necessarily, that my particular team can't deliver, and that might do really well on some other label. So, and that success could be defined in a variety of different ways, whether or not it's recorded music, publishing, licensing, some other way of capturing audience or revenue.
Pete?
I always think uniqueness. What is your unique talent? What do you do that nobody else is doing quite like you? You know, what is it that makes you stand out? Drive, ambition, you know, behind that uniqueness, I think, is what fuels it. But, you know, if you've got something really unique, then I think, you know, you really can take on the world with it.
Craig, the criteria. What makes you say yes?
I'm on the artist side. I think there's certainly singularly the voice, you know, the unique sound and tone and texture and the ability to connect emotionally. I think, of course, the songwriting is another component that, you know, artists that are writing compelling songs, the ability, even at the earliest stages, to see signs of being able to write a classic song, an evergreen song, a song that's going to stand the test of time. I think, you know, those two factors. And then, you know, now, obviously, in the age of the internet, the drive, the motivation, the self-starting ingenuity on how to market and promote becomes another sort of layer that becomes, you know, significant added value, obviously, as we evaluate, you know, new talent.
Monty, what does it take for you to say yes?
I don't know.
That's a truthful answer, actually.
Yeah, that's a truthful answer. It's the kind of thing when you walk into a store and you tell the clerk, you know, I'll know it when I see it. And that really is the truth, you know, because I agree with what, you know, Pete and Craig just said. You know, it's the passion, it's the point of view, it's, you know, that sense of urgency for success. But, you know, we go into work each and every day with an open mind and just, you know, we try to listen to the universe, we try to pay attention, and ultimately, you know, when that extraordinary artist walks in, you pray to God that you're prepared and you're paying attention.
Thank you. Okay, let's do this a little differently. I'll put up a topic and you guys just jump on it and don't wait for me to call on you. So let's talk about YouTube, the YouTube phenomenon of all these artists who can aggregate millions of hits on their original music. What does that mean? Anybody want to take that? Is that a criteria for signing something? Nobody wants to take that?
I'll take that. You know, I look at YouTube all the time. I get links sent to me all the time. You know, I'm impressed with a lot of artists that have actually made a career out of covering hit songs, and they've gained an audience, and some tour and sell tickets and sell indie records and sell covers and actually have a career, and I think that that's pretty impressive. It's pretty rare. I'm not sure, maybe somebody has, but I think it's pretty exceptional for someone to take the leap from the YouTube artist to be the, if you will, the legitimate artist. And it really just boils down to you need a hit. I mean, that really doesn't change. So the fact is, whether you've figured out a way to create an audience on YouTube, but where the rubber hits the road, it ultimately is having your own original song that resonates, and that's difficult for a YouTube artist or any other artist, and that's really the bottom line.
But what about somebody like Bieber, who didn't have a hit song to begin with, and just generated millions of views on YouTube and parlayed that? Anybody want to jump on that? Nobody wants to jump on that. I see you guys.
Look,
it depends maybe on your philosophy about why you're signing artists. If you're signing artists just because you're trying to predict what's going to sell the most copies or have the greatest amount of revenue come in, that's a different approach than a lot of us maybe have here. Some of us are interested in curation. So I think maybe in cultural contribution or spotting something that's maybe beyond just dollars and cents important for music lovers. So it's Bieber's an easy target. I'm sure there's people who find his music meaningful and like to buy his records, but I don't know if any of us here are really looking for Bieber right off. So.
Well, certainly there's a huge audience who is, and what he did with YouTube was absolutely incredible. But let's convert that now. So millions of eyeballs on YouTube in the aggregate don't seem to move the needle for any of you guys. What about a line around the block in front of a club? What does that do to you and your criteria for saying yes or no? Someone want to jump on that? Go.
Same answer.
Yeah, I would say that's certainly an indication of passion. remember a band called Godsmack, one of the first bands that I signed, and they had sent their record to 28 record companies and had been passed on, and we were the 29th. Just so happened we just started in business, so otherwise they would have sent it to us. And I remember I went up to see the band play. It was Friday night. It was in Worcester, Massachusetts, and I couldn't get in. And it was sold out, and there was a line around the block. And I said, something's happening here. And, the band, when you looked at them, they were tagged as being dated, and their sound was a bit, somewhat derivative of Alice in Chains and such. But I just looked around and said, well, somebody likes them. And so it's clearly an indication of passion for sure.
Anybody else want to comment on the line around the block in the A&R process?
I'll give you a major label and an independent label perspective. When I was an A&R guy at a major label, there's a lot of downward pressure to deliver. So things like big lines around the block, are there other metrics out there that suggest that this artist is going to be successful? They become very important to you because you really want to keep your job, and there's a lot of pressure to deliver records. You also have large promotion staffs to feed, so you can't have a top 40 staff with nothing to work. So there's a whole lot of things that are pollutants in a way, in terms of getting in the way of making a pure discovery kind of curation experience. On the other side, I think it's we don't do everything well. Like we have partnered with many people up here who, to give us kind of scale or to get particular services, but it's our kind of obligation to our artists to, if there isn't a line around the block, by the time we're done with our job, there will be. So if the band is great, like we have a band called Mike Snow, and they just did 10,000 tickets in New York. No one knew who they were when I signed them. I introduced them. I tried to talk them out of becoming a band, and it's the same. I think the same thing is the case with Santigold. We've had like successes that are those are interesting ways to measure success, I think, to invert your question. Like, is a giant, is 100 million views on YouTube a barometer of success? Is a line around the block a barometer of success other than a particular chart?
It's not about the barometer of success that I'm interested in bringing to our audience. It's about the criteria for engagement in the A&R process. Like, what is it that gets the little hairs in your nose or your ears, like, enough to where you want to, like, do the homework? So, and it's coming from so many sources. So, Avery, how does it work with you? How many channels are feeding into your brain, submitting artists? And let's do a little poll here. Like, where does it come from? Where does the music come from?
For us, look, we get solicited. I mean, I don't know, dozens of records a week, certainly. But I usually find myself. I mean, it's sort of like I'm a sports fan, so if you make an analogy to, say, a big-time college football program, you have tryout day and you have 1,000 kids show up, and maybe one kid makes the special teams, the kickoff team. But we usually find ourselves hearing about the best kid in Mississippi or the best kid in Minnesota, and so we find ourselves really out and about chasing the best of the best.
So you have talent scouts, a staff of talent scouts?
Absolutely.
How many talent scouts?
About a dozen.
Yeah, about a dozen or so.
And their sole job is to just find shit, basically?
It's a combination, yeah. I mean, you really got to, you have to turn over a lot of rocks just to see what's happening, and you have to know what rocks to turn over. And I think that's really the real skill of where to look and the sort of the nuances. I remember when I first started, everybody in A&R, and I wasn't in A&R, but I would walk past someone's office, and they had about a refrigerator-sized cardboard box. You probably had one with all your tapes that you would store your demo tapes. Well, today we have, I don't know, thousands, if not millions, of songs at our disposal on the internet. So, yeah, it's tough. It's a lot of stuff to go through.
Steve, what's feeding into your funnel?
Well, of course, we follow everything that everybody else follows online, but funnily enough, the biggest artist that we've had recently, Andy Grammer, who had a couple big hits in the past year, Keep Your Head Up and Fine By Me, we found him performing on the 3rd Street Promenade in Santa Monica, California. And he was the most popular guy on the promenade. And every weekend he sold about 100 CDs at $10 a pop, just standing there on the promenade playing. And because this guy had spent every day for the last couple of years just standing on the promenade playing, he was really good live because he had to fight against all these other guys on the promenade to get the attention of people who were passing by. So we saw this guy. We said, this guy's already great live, and he's got some hit songs. So, you can spend all day on YouTube or, listening to links that come in via your email or all kinds of other ways to find music, but sometimes a hit just comes out of the weirdest place.
Darius, how does it come into your funnel?
I don't know. I feel like I'm probably the least qualified A&R person as far as demo sifting and all that. I think we have a community of artists that we work with. They refer us a lot to artists that they're friends with. We learn about music that way. Our staff is very immersed in what's happening musically. So we're music fans, I think, first and foremost, and we discover a lot from that. We do listen to almost all the demos we get. We also pay attention to things on the internet. We also have relationships with managers and lawyers who, say, hey, look, we know you'd be a great home for this artist. We just found them. And that's a thing, too. That's a tool from a label perspective, is that in a lot of ways, we're not our own A&R people anymore. There's a sort of community of A&R people as well who are trying to come to you with things and learning how to listen to certain people that you begin to trust the taste of is one thing that we do.
Josh?
We operate a bunch of different businesses, so I have a lot of inputs through our publishing team who's out there constantly finding new writers and new artists, and we have a couple of online businesses around curation. So we have lots of editors out there scouring what's going on online. So I have a lot of the online inputs that most people have, and again, if you've been in the game for a while, you have a lot of those relationships from lawyers and managers. So it's coming from a variety of different sources. But I think for us at Downtown, I think the two differentiators are the main ones. There is no A&R staff, so it's really literally just me, which is an interesting change from when there were a lot of people. I think it's why the roster's kind of, to be honest, kind of strange and oddly configured. But that's really the core change for me.
Peter, how are you getting your music when where's it coming from?
We're spreading a pretty big net in a lot of different areas, actually. And as Avery said, there's all kinds of ways now to find talent. It's really changed. I mean, it used to be very specific. You got your CD tape, from your contact, and that was, or you heard about some bands selling out. That was it. Now it's like 100 different ways you can hear about a new artist. One of the things that we still do, which I think we're really known for, and because it is a very A&R driven culture at RCA, is that we really develop artists. I mean, people literally that come in with nothing much going on. We have an artist called El King right now, who's from Bushwick. Originally from the middle of the country, moved to Bushwick, and she came in with a banjo and a bunch of songs and an incredible sense of humor. She kind of had this really crazy personality and ran a comedy show as well as playing all these amazing songs. And we were just really turned on by her, and now we're developing her, and people are coming to us. So, I mean, it's just an example of a new artist that, we're doing it the old-fashioned way. But on the other hand, we pay a lot of attention to what's going on online. And we might see somebody on YouTube or, one of the new outlets. But because somebody's talented and on YouTube doesn't mean to say they can sell records. As again was mentioned before, I mean, you got to have special, unique material if you're going to get attention on YouTube or something really unique. So, A&R, artist development, I would say that is the cornerstone of what we're still doing. with all of those new inputs.
Craig?
I think you have to be open to the entire population of the industry because it's clearly littered with music lovers. So whether it's songwriters, producers, engineers, obviously lawyers and managers keep getting mentioned, but it obviously goes so much deeper from booking agents to publicists to just the general population of the industry. I think you could be finding artists from any walk really, and of course now with the internet and blogs and YouTube and sort of every conceivable metric online, there's sort of an endless sort of well of curation that needs to be done to discover new talent. So you use your A&R staff that hopefully continues to get more and more fine-tuned of building, their network of relationships that they trust for talent finding.
Thank you. And Monty?
I think what Avery said earlier, is something we live by where, for those of you in the audience and for any young aspiring artist, embrace the technology, focus on your success, focus on the marketplace. Today you don't even have to get out of your pajamas to cut a record and make it available for sale. Take advantage of iTunes. The store is open 24 hours. It costs $50 through TuneCore to make your music available, because the reality of it is, whatever you're doing out there, you're going to make an impact, or possibly not, on that record and the sale. So these are things we're constantly paying attention to, and not to say we're just looking for things that are commercially available, but at the end of the day, and just giving you a snapshot in terms of the way I think and what we look at, it's clearly something we do pay attention to. So,
I mean, I actually have one point exactly to amplify that is, I feel in a lot of ways, A&R is now more crowdsourced, so to speak. Like, artists are doing it themselves. They're finding their own audiences themselves. It's a much different landscape now than what I would imagine it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. And so, as record people, sometimes we're okay having things discovered by the fans themselves first, and just based on relationships or who we are or how we like to work with artists, then working with those artists that have already established something for themselves.
Thank you. Okay, so now we get to do questions from the audience. They're being posted here on this plasma screen, which is blank right now. Fellas, there were some questions before.
I'm just curious, how many artists are in the room? So it's almost half.
How many aspiring A&R people are there? Okay, how many perspiring A&R people are there? Okay, so not many aspiring A&R people. Okay, so I see the Milky Way. Okay, we could. The questions are not being fed into the monitor here, so we can revert to humans speaking. Let me. I'm a little blinded. So, the lady in red, stand up and speak loudly.
Hi. So it seems like you guys have made and I'm curious, if there were one woman in business.
Here comes a roving mic. Let's start over. Okay, let's start over. Hi, my name is?
Hi, my name is what? No.
My name is what?
Jillian. My name is
And you are
Jillian
from
Keller.
where?
I am a singer, and
Okay,
I have
from?
a consulting business called Conductor Entertainment Group.
And you're from where?
From New York.
Okay.
Yeah. And so my question is, it seems like A&R in general, and obviously the men sitting on stage, is an old boys club. Not old. Young. But if there were a woman that were sitting up on stage with you in the music business, who would it be and why?
Oh, I'll take that question. I like that question. A few years ago, I was president of Columbia Records, and when I got there, it was a complete boys club in A&R, and it was driving me crazy. I couldn't imagine how they could possibly represent the tastes of half the population. So at the time, I went out and I hired 3 female A&R people in their 20s. And one of them was Maria Egan, who went on to sign the Avett Brothers. One of them was Maureen Kenny, who went on to sign MGMT and Metro Station. And one of them was Becca Calloway, who now is a key A&R person for Dr. Luke. And I would take any one of those three people right now at any company that I was at. They're great.
As I say, we have Rainey Hancock, who's one of our senior executives who signed Kesha, and you know, she's probably one of the most prominent A&R people in our company and in the UK. And, you know, my good friend Alison Donald, who actually Ron mentioned earlier, who you know has been doing A&R for many years now, runs Columbia Records in the UK, and you know she's really a great A&R person. So a couple of examples of people right in our system, not to mention the 3 different scouts that work for us that happen to be female. So, you know.
Monty, is your microphone not working? It's dead? You can have mine. I want to hear what you have to say.
No, I was just, I was going to mention the fact that Maureen Kenny now works for us, and she was also involved in the recent signing of Monsters and Men, which is, you know, breaking big as we speak. We also have a woman by the name of Wendy Goldstein who heads the West Coast for us as a senior VP and is putting a staff together, but she's a very talented executive, and, you know, quite a few more.
So we'll just mention a few incredibly important women in A&R. Sylvia Rohn, can't not mention her name. One of the titans of the field. Let's go all the way back to Florence Greenberg and give her a shout out here too, who was one of the seminal A&R people at the beginning of the industry. So, you know, sorry about the appearance of the Boys Club. We'll make sure our booking practice for next year's panel has been amended. Good luck to you. Who's the next question?
Right here, Ron.
Okay.
Jerry Lembo. Album sales seem to obviously are generally declining. There's a dependence on hit singles. We've had a drastic reduction in A&R personnel. Short of 360 deals, what is the forward-thinking strategy of record companies today?
Who wants to take that? That was too many things in the... What is the question? Say it again, like, and who are you? Let's go back to that. Hi, my name is... Jerry Lembo. Oh, my God. So, Jerry, what's your question again?
I'm trying to get an idea of the forward thinking of record companies today. Album sales declining, dependence on hit singles, reduction in the A&R personnel. So what's the forward?
Okay, so how do you stay optimistic when the old record business is in decline? Let's do this fast. Everybody give a lightning rod of answer. The sky is falling, Avery.
Yeah,
what
well, what's old is new. I mean, the fundamentals really haven't changed, and that's, I mean, the difference is, yeah, we're sort of without a net now, so we're on a tightrope. We used to have a larger net. Now we have like a little postage stamp down there. So if you take a big swing and miss, it's going to hurt quite a bit more. So you want to be more careful. You want to, you know, I mean, the competitive nature of deals it does what it does, and sometimes deals do become very expensive. But ultimately, if you can identify talent, you know the value of it, you can move quickly, you're able to take it off the table before it gets out of hand. I mean, again, it's nothing really new. It's something that we've all been doing for, you know, as long as we've been doing this this business. But the fundamentals are, yeah, just try to make great music.
But I think Jerry's question, let's move it through the panel quickly. I think Jerry's question is about, okay, album sales, albums maybe even are in complete decline. We're an iTunes culture, we're a singles culture, the sky is falling, the business is crapping out. Steve, what do we do?
You know, technologies come and go, and some technologies come in a disruptive way that destroys commerce, and then other technologies come in a way that creates commerce. And I think what you have to just do is keep making great music, make music you love, make music you think other people are going to love, and the waves will keep coming ashore, and some of them will be really good for the record business, other ones will be really bad. We've had periods in the past when new technologies have come that have been like a gold rush, and we've had other periods in the past where technologies have come that have scared the hell out of the record business, and we've gotten through them all, but the only people who got through them all were the people who had the hits.
Darius, are you worried?
Yeah, I think we all have the same issues, declining revenue. We still have to decide what to release, and so, you know, even if things are tougher, you know, some companies are going to like management deals, 360 deals, figuring out other ways to maybe increase how much money is coming in. But I think that's a separate question that has nothing to do with A&R. We still have to, regardless of the state of things, have to decide what to release and which artists to work with.
Josh? Worried?
I'm just trying to, am I worried? Well, I thought I really honestly felt in 2008 like we were kind of running through sand. I felt like that was a really frustrating time. And I feel like last year, the business was sort of flat, which for us is a bit like a hockey stick after an enormous decline in the last 10 years. I attribute a lot of that to I think we're on the big, this doesn't influence my A&R decisions, but it influences where I invest and whether I invest in recorded music or music publishing or other parts of what we do at Downtown. So right now, I'm really optimistic about the record business. I feel like we're on the precipice of a change in consumer culture. I think people will move away from the concept of ownership to access, and I think Spotify is really leading the way. I think if that's successful, you look at Sound Exchange and Spotify, we have new sources of revenue that Steve talked about, technologies coming back in that are disruptive that actually will, return, revenue to the content holders. So
Peter?
I'm always worried though.
Yeah. Actually, that was where I was going to go too. I mean, it's cool. I'm a big fan of Spotify and the access model. I mean, as a kid, if I could have imagined having the whole record store at my fingertips, it would have blown my mind. So today, the idea of having all of that access to that music wherever you go, I think is an amazing thing. And I think people are really turned on by that idea. I mean, clearly it's not been presented in a way yet that everybody's into that. But when I see and hear about what kind of deals we're now making with YouTube and, Samsung and all the different people that are coming into the marketplace in the streaming area, I know that those numbers are substantial and they will make up for a lot of lost, traditional album, CD, iTunes bundles. So I think, that's where we're going. I mean,
what are we doing now? More questions? Okay, because I just had an incorrect count off here. So we have time for a couple more questions. One was about jazz that was flashed on the screen earlier. From anybody want to handle this? Like the state of jazz at major record companies investing in jazz artists. How are you feeling about jazz? Anybody want to grab that? Any jazzers?
For us, it's obviously a sad circumstance. But when we took on, a partnership with Amy Winehouse for the United States, that she was considered a jazz artist. But, again, I keep using the word extraordinary, and she was just, a talent. And, that kind of person, when she walks into the room, you just know she's different. The point of view, the music was exceptional, and I don't think you should be really caught up in being too preoccupied with genres or categories and just, focus on the great music.
Anybody else? Okay, would you like to make it? Okay, take the microphone, please. Hi, my name is?
Hi, my name is Gerald Miller with New Jazz Entertainment.
What are you?
In New York. With
What
New
do you
Jazz
do?
Entertainment. We have a jazz record label, half the Jazz and Lincoln Center Orchestra. 3 of the Marcellus family members are on
Talk
our
right
label.
into the mic. It's hard to hear you.
3 of the Marcellus family are on our label. And Craig, this is primarily for you and Peter because both of you have companies that primarily made their name in jazz. RCA had a big jazz label, and they operated RCA Studios, which was big in recording jazz for about 30 years. And Craig, of course, met and Nasuhi founded Atlantic with primarily jazz. How interested are you in reopening some of those non-popular genres? Because everybody talks about rap and hip-hop and urban music, but how much interest do each of you have in reestablishing your connection with like non-popular music like jazz or classical or other genres like that?
I was just saying, if either of us if Pete has that division, I mean, for us it's about being able to deliver and having the expertise and manpower that is capable of both doing the signing and doing the marketing and promotion, and we've really expanded into quite a few genres. We're trying to operate a label with really best-in-class artists as we can, from country to electronic to rap to R&B, and yet maintain a really small roster. So when you start thinking of touching every single genre, you also need people of expertise in those genres on all levels, because it's one thing to sign it, and this is the A&R panel, of finding, when we come across a great jazz artist or a classical artist, the first thing I'm going to think of is, well, how does that artist really get managed inside the building, and where am I going to find the pockets of expertise? And sometimes we're able to do things in genres because I can cobble together enough individuals inside the company that will have an expertise, whether it's theater or Broadway or house music or whatever. With respect to jazz in particular, that hasn't been an area that we've been able to actually find both artists that we're interested in first that would really sort of support starting to staff up. We're always looking, and quite frankly, don't turn ourselves away from hearing anything and everything. But generally, the A&R will sort of drive then staffing up or coming up with a scenario by which we can deliver on the marketing side.
Thank you for bringing up jazz. It's always nice to say that word when we're talking about music. It's a kind of a forgotten stepchild. We're actually out of time. And thank you all very, very much for coming. It's a time of great optimism in the music industry, where the technology has provided us an entire brand new future with how our music is brought to the public and recorded and produced, and it's leveled the playing field in a fabulous, positive way. And on that note, remember, it's always about the song, the song, the song, and the song. Good luck to you, and have a nice afternoon.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.